One of the questions I recently got is why is water considered as life within Jainism? I have spoken about it earlier as part of one of my other videos. The answer is not as clear as I would like. In Jainism, if we say what is life, then the answer is that life is basically of two types. One is immovable, which does not move, and the other is movable. So the whole movable part goes into all of the type of life we kind of understand in terms of creatures and reptiles and animals, and they are being segregated on the basis of sense, the how many senses they have, whether they have 2 senses, 3 senses accordingly. In that, humans also come in as the 5 sensory movable life forms. Within that, gods also come in. So it's a pretty elaborate chapter on movable life forms. But when we talk about water, we are basically talking about the immovable life forms. The immovable life forms are of 5 types. It basically includes the 4 elements, which is air, which is called as Vayu being wind, water being Jal, fire, which is Agni, and the 4th one is earth, which is Dharti. And the 5th immovable life form is plants. So there are these 5 types of immovable life forms. These life forms, which are of the 4 elements, how to understand them is the question, because how now they have gone to describe is that each of these elements have specific forms of life or related to the specific form of the element. For example, for water, they are considering different life forms, which are ice related life forms, dew related life forms, rain related life forms, and so on. Different types of water bodies are considered as different life forms, types of the water life. So one simple understanding would be that even in a single drop of water, there are innumerable life forms, and that we can even attest from a scientific modern science understanding, where they will say there are those microbial lives within a single drop of water. Now, whether within Jainism they have described that these microbial forms will be different in ice versus rainwater versus dew, or they are saying that ice by itself is a form of life. So that is there is a point of contention, and I need to also identify where within the scripture is it written, because so far what I have found is within the Uttaradhyayan Sutra only, that is the last discourse of Mahavir Swami. One of the last chapters, it basically talks about all the different lives. The Jain monks and also the householders, the Jain community in general is extremely careful with water. Jain monks especially, they will not have bath with water. They are not allowed to enter into water body actually. So they will they just rub themselves off, because water is considered so precious and so sacred. And so that is why I have heard that water is considered as life. However, even the fire element for that matter is being considered very sacred, because there is a specific line that grabbed a lot of my attention, which was that a person who enters water or they enter fire, or if you throw your body into water or you throw your body into fire, both of the things are supposed to be extremely, it's a sin basically, you're not supposed to do it. So in that sense, fire and water is being treated similarly, except in the social context, because nobody is really going to be throwing themselves in fire, but in water they do throw themselves, and that is why the Jain conduct of treating water as extremely sacred becomes prominent. But then that is because of the social situation. So if we remove that part and we say, then is it that fire and water are being treated the same, are both being considered as life-making materials? The thing that sets water apart is the fact that basically when life came up on earth, it is always a big question mark, right? Like, how did life happen in the first place? Because it is basically the coming together of inanimate objects, which in modern science we consider them inanimate. And they come together and all of a sudden you have life. So that is a massive, it's like a miracle taking place basically. And so how do we explain it? So that is where water gets a very, very special place, because and there is a video of Sadhguru also, there's a 40-minute talk of Sadhguru talking about the miracle of water. You could watch it if this topic interests you. And in that he mentions the same thing. It is like when few elements like hydrogen, carbon and those things come together, and in the presence of water they become into life. You know, the very first single celled or whatever life that came up, it is the water presence which is supposed to be the catalyst, the miracle element. And in that sense, water is being given a very special stature. And even today we will see that water is said to have memory and intelligence. And it's not just Sadhguru saying this. There is, for example, this Instagram handle which shares very interesting posts talking about how water is it retains the thoughts and emotions of people around it. That is also why water is used as, we will, for example, we will at times take some water, we will chant mantras on it and drink it. So the water is supposed to retain that quality. However, coming back to that analogy of water and fire being treated the same way within the Jain scripture, then this actually applies to fire as well, because fire is also considered a very special item in that sense. We do our pujas and havans in presence of fire. Or the homa is actually being done with the fire being considered the transmission source. No, whatever we give to the fire goes to the gods, like that. So obviously fire also has a very, very special place. So in that sense, is water different is the question, is what I'm pondering over here. As I mentioned, from the Jain scriptural perspective, I am not entirely clear now. I have seen some content also online which suggests that water is considered as life, but I feel so far whatever I've come across, it traces back to the fact that life originated on this planet in the presence of water, and hence water is that miracle element, and that is why it is considered cut above other inanimate objects and may be considered as life itself. However, I am not yet convinced with the logic that life can happen only in the presence of water. That is where I am. So maybe on this planet, yes, it has happened in the presence of water, but are we ruling out all other planets and everything else, is what the question is. So I am giving some sadhana related consultations. So if you are interested, you can sign up for that. You can head to my website inspirituality.in. Namaskaram.